Hello, everyone. We're here. I'm trying to smooth my hair out. How is everyone doing? How are you doing, Mary Lou?
Doing great. I had a great weekend in Florida, kayaking all around and getting a lot of sun and enjoying the land of the free. It was great.
Did you swim with the manatees?
I did. I swam with manatees. It was a peak experience. I just love the manatees. And you just float over the manatee and just sync up with it. And it's so peaceful. And I really like it. It's a weird thing that I'm sort of addicted to now.
Oh, well, I'm so glad. I'm glad that the Florida house has worked. Can I ask you and also everyone watching if things look and sound okay? I'm on Salt Spring Island. I'm at my parents' house and I'm in the bedroom and I have a weird setup and a different mic and I don't know what their internet's like. So am I jerky? Do I sound fine? Okay.
It sounds great. And we can see the stirrings of Emma in the back.
Yes. So on the bed, it is a bedroom, but the bonus of the bedroom is that we have Emma in the stream sleeping on the bed happily. She's been having such a nice time over on the island because I left Adelita in Mexico. So she thinks that we got rid of her finally. So it's just been me and Emma. We've been going for some lovely walks in the woods and talking a lot. And she's like, okay, things are back to normal finally, thank God. Okay, so far you sound okay, not the greatest. That's because I'm an audio snob. I know it. So I'm not using my regular mic that I usually have my Shure mic, but I don't travel with that because I don't want to wreck it and it's too big and bulky and heavy. So I bring a different, less good mic that's still okay. So I probably don't sound great, but if I'm too quiet, then let me know because I can change the input and then we can stop talking about this. Okay, thanks everybody. I'm Megan Murphy, and this is Where Are All the Women? I've been very, very stressed today and yesterday on account of knowing what a woman is, maybe where the women are. I don't know if I filled you in on this, Mary Lou, or if you followed any of it, but you probably know that last year in October, our little group over here that we're calling Vancouver Island Speaks, we've been organizing these events over on the island to talk about gender identity ideology and women's spaces, the impact on kids, parental rights, men walking into girls' change rooms, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a real challenge every time, as you well know. And last October, we had booked an event at the Cowichan Community Center, which is in Duncan on Vancouver Island. And they canceled us, citing the BC Human Rights Code, pre-accusing us of hate speech. You're probably going to engage in hate speech, so you can't come.
Crime.
Yeah, thought crime, pre-crime. I think what probably happened based on, we see all the posts online from the activists and how they operate. We also know from experience how they operate. Is I think that the community center got harassed by activists who told them that we were hateful and bigoted, and that if they hosted us, they would in turn be responsible for having, platformed hate speech, and they got scared and canceled. I feel like that's usually what happens to people who, maybe don't totally understand the issue, but also, especially venues that are connected to like the city, the municipality, the government, which of course the community center is. But, private venues sometimes get scared and cancel us too. Needless to say, we decided to fight back, and the Democracy Fund supported us in that fight. So the Democracy Fund had a couple of lawyers represent us. We didn't attempt to sue or anything like that. We didn't want to sue. We're not trying to, get money or not. We're not even trying to punish the community center. We just wanted to book an event. So that was our only ask. We explained our position. We and our lawyers on our behalf explained our constitutional rights. This isn't hate speech. And just requested that we be allowed to book. Like, this is fair. This is an important conversation. The community wants to have this conversation. Women have rights too. We have free speech rights. And so they actually finally, I think we went back and forth, with about 4 letters or something. I saw some people on Twitter being like, and on Facebook being like, well, they probably had no choice, but they certainly had a choice. We're not litigious. The Democracy Fund isn't even litigious. They wanted the same result that we wanted, which was fair. And so they finally got back to us like late last week and said, we've decided you can book. The man we've been communicating with has been very nice and helpful and accommodating there. And you can have June 8th. So between sort of finalizing and trying to like throw something together very, very, very last minute and get like all our marketing materials and our poster and our ticketing site up, which we also had to get approved by the community center. We were finally able to launch everything on Tuesday. So we basically have like 4 days to promote all this.
What was it?
And I can't breathe. Huh?
Was it supposed to happen before they canceled you?
Pardon?
Were you scheduled and then canceled and then rescheduled?
Yeah. So is this me that I can't hear you very well, or is that the mic? You guys, can you hear Mary Lou? Do I just need to turn my volume up? Is Mary Lou's mic okay? Is everyone's mic okay? Let me know. My hair is like this because it's like a rat's nest and there's no other option. And I just put a bunch of Vaseline in it to try to like smooth it out. Literally Vaseline. Yeah. So we, like in October, we had booked for October 4, I think. And we had sent them our poster and everything. They knew what the event was. But as soon as we started promoting it, I think they started to get harassed. And so they canceled us. That letter that they wrote is on my Substack. It was very maddening. But
I just can't believe we're still dealing with this.
I know.
Is my mic any better when I put it close to my mouth?
Oh yeah, I think it needs to be closer to your mouth. It probably needs to be higher up. It probably needs to be.
I hate that.
I know. Sorry.
I got it. Yeah, and it's just the same stupid story that's been going on for over, how long have you been in this fight? Over 10 years. And it's just the same, they use the same stupid arguments.
Well, yeah, and it's weird because we did an event in Victoria on Thursday. And granted, we kept the venue a secret until the morning of the event because we didn't want the venue to get harassed. Although the venue was very supportive of us. They want to do more events with us. They actually wanted to promote it on social media. They were proud to be hosting our event. And we stopped that from happening just because we were worried about what would happen to them. Like, we didn't want them to be vandalized or anything to happen to the building or, them to suffer a whole bunch of harassment. But they seemed pretty unafraid. So we're very glad about that. That event went really well and the venue was really nice. So I think we'll definitely try to make use of that in the future. But we didn't have any protesters at all. So we were like, okay, maybe things have changed. Like, maybe they're not doing this anymore, or maybe they know it doesn't work, so they don't bother. Like, or maybe they figured out that it's a bad look to harass women who are trying to speak about their safety and women's rights and kids' safety. But nope, they have not, because as soon as we started promoting this event, which is taking place on Saturday, June 8th, the activists started organizing and acting like psychos, like right away. So they a group called Revolve Cowichan did up these slides, which they posted on Facebook, which are actually quite amusing if you read them. I can see you, Dan the Man, on X. Did you see those slides? I would love to read some of them to you.
I think you should.
Okay. If anyone wants to see these slides, they're on a Facebook page. Yeah, it's called Revolve Cowichan. I'm gonna stick the link in the live chat here. Because they're quite good. And actually the comments, like the little conversation debate that's happening under the post on Revolve Cowichan is very good, because like what definitely has changed in, I would say, like the past 3, maybe 4 years or so, is that I think people have become unafraid to push back. Like the trans activists are not in the majority anymore. I don't know that they always were, but they're not dominating the conversation anymore. People just aren't taking it. They're like, nope, women have the right to speak. What are you guys talking about? Megan's not homophobic. These women aren't violent. Like, stop this.
Now, that has definitely changed. It used to be 100% pro-trans in the comments. And part of that was they would rapidly delete all of the pro-woman comments, all of the comments critical of transgenderism. It was almost instantaneous that they would just, completely disappear all of that. And now things are staying up in the comment section, which is amazing, right? Like even at the mainstream news places would delete the anti-trans comments, like the New York Times would delete them, and now they stay up in the mainstream.
Okay, that's a good point. That's interesting. Yeah, I think that it's the debate is acceptable a lot more than it was in the past. Like, yeah, I think you're right, which is that, places like the CBC, the New York Times, would just delete anything that was going to be labeled anti-trans, which is anything challenging gender identity, ideology, or trans activism whatsoever.
Right. And I think you're also correct that more people are speaking up. So many people didn't see it happening, even though it's been 10 years since Bruce Jenner and Laverne Cox was on the front page of Time magazine in 2014, the trans tipping point, Orange is the New Black. People, you could see this coming. I Am Jazz was already on the air, but only a handful of forward-thinking, almost exclusively women, with the exception of the Jensen guys, right? Like, with the exception of Eric Jensen and Robert Jensen, it was all women who were like, hey, look down the road, look where this is going to lead. And for some reason, most Americans couldn't see it. And here we are. All of our predictions have come true, and people are waking up to just how messed up this is. And it's great. It's great people are waking up.
Yeah.
It's too late.
I was talking to a woman on the phone today who is going to speak on our panel in Cowichan, but I can't reveal her name because she's a regular working class woman and she can't afford to lose her regular working class job. But she is going to come speak publicly. And isn't it always these women who do it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know that now that there's like money to be made, there's the other people who are stepping forward, but I think at least in the beginning, it was women who all had a lot to lose and did lose a lot in speaking up. And she's like an old school lesbian. And I think like the rest of us, people who were leftists our whole lives, dedicated to the NDP here in Canada, and just feels like the NDP has completely not only sold out women, but sold out the working class, the working people. But she was talking about, how long this has been going on, and reminded me about, I think was it called Rad Femme Rise Up in Toronto, which happened so long ago.
Right.
Sam Berg.
Right. And like 2010 was the first one that Sam put on. And she put on multiple Rad Femme Reboot, Rad Femme Rising. I think she did 3 of them at least before before Mishfest. I can't remember what the one she always had these clever names, but that was 2015 was the one in Mishfest. But she'd had 3 or 4 before that, and there was one in Australia as well.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Totally.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. But yeah, I mean, I remember those women, like they were just trying to have their own like private meetings. These weren't even public meetings. They were just trying to get together with other radical feminists to talk about what was going on in a private space, and they couldn't do it. They would be like so threatened and harassed. Like just like, 20 radical feminists, or probably more than that in some cases. But
I don't think it was much more than that. I think it was 15 to 30 women just trying to meet, and the Quaker meeting hall would kick them out. The libraries would kick them out. They kept losing all their venues and being pursued with death threats and other threats of violence.
yeah.
Michelle Goldberg attended one of their events in her "What is a Woman" essay in the New Yorker, and that was like 2014 or 2013 that she mentioned Sam and Lear and Rachel Ivey. Like women, she deserves a lot of credit for being at the forefront long before Michael Schellenberger or Mount Walsh discovered this topic.
Yeah, that was a good article that almost everyone seems to have forgotten. And yeah, she actually interviewed me for that piece, but I didn't get any quotes in. But yeah, she did a really good job with that article, and was on top of it. I mean, it's almost surprising that article was even published.
I know.
I feel like maybe, I don't know, maybe she got it in at the right time when people thought that it was this weird fringe thing. Because I think if a few years later, I don't think that would have gotten published in the New Yorker. You know what I mean?
Oh no, it definitely wouldn't have. And it was a really important article, and it gets just memory hold completely. Well, where were all the women discussing it? No women ever talked about it.
Except for in the New Yorker and across North America and Australia and in the UK.
Right. And I think she had a shorter piece in the New York Times around that same time too, in the op-ed section.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Was speaking out it. The article was called "What is a Woman" by Michelle Goldberg, and I think it had the exact same title as Matt Walsh's movie.
No. I wonder if she's annoyed.
I'm sure she's perpetually annoyed.
I mean, I was like, maybe she's bigger than we are, like she's a bigger person. Dragon Kiddigan, maybe have a message on the t-shirt, nothing hateful, just factual, like trans queer is homophobic. I don't know, are you talking about my t-shirt, which is available at fourthwall.com or a different t-shirt? I have some good merch over on that website, which you can find at meganmurphy.ca if you click on the shop tab. I like that I did a bunch of Team Turf stuff. I don't have my Team Turf mug with me because it's at my sister's house. But I like Team Turf because it's sort of that reference to Dave Chappelle's.
Right. I love
I'm on Team Turf. He's like, if J.K. Rowling's on is a turf, then I guess I'm on Team Turf.
Right.
I just wanted to address Wise Son asked, how do you feel about right-wing commentators utilizing / co-opting pro-women rhetoric to push an agenda of sexual oppression in North America?
I feel like we can't trust men on the right or the left to push a pro-woman agenda. But I also am appreciative of anyone on any side of the political spectrum addressing the issue of how the transgender movement is harmful to women's rights. And I actually think a lot of people who get labeled right-wing do care about women's sports and do care about the safety of women and the dignity of women. I don't think the right is any more oppressive of women than the left. It's just a different flavor style of oppression.
Yeah, I think that's the really important point, is I think that when those kinds of questions are asked of us, which they are a lot, we're constantly being accused of or told we're being used by the right or by conservatives, or that, you know, we're sort of selling our souls, like we're choosing gender, you know, to I don't know, put a stop to gender identity ideology or gender identity legislation, but trading in all of women's rights and anything pro-women and abortion and all of that stuff. And I think that's BS because, I mean, I think if you're voting for any party, you're trading in all sorts of things. Like, there's not any political party that's representing all or even most of my interests, I don't think. Not that's, you know, viable, not that's going to get elected.
No, and I think the truly misogynist right-wing men, like the repeal the 19th guys, the women belong in the home without, you know, the kind of right-wing Taliban guys, none of them are co-opting this issue to pretend to be pro-women's rights. Those men, who are a vocal minority and pretty disgusting guys from what they like to post on Twitter, they're more gleeful about how trans rights are destroying women's rights. Like, they're upfront about how they think this is hysterical, that women are getting owned by gender ideology, and how women's studies turned into gender studies, and now women are getting screwed by their own creation. They love to talk about that. So those men who truly openly admit to hating women aren't pretending to be on our side. I think that guys who vote Republican often love their wives and daughters and go to their daughters' soccer games and track meets, and they're mad about this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the assumption that, you know, that right-wing commenters are co-opting pro-woman rhetoric to push an agenda of sexual oppression, I don't think is true or fair. I think some people, like Matt Walsh, would like female oppression, like would like for women not to vote, and to have little choice about what they do in their lives and be at home and not in the workplace and be punished and even criminalized for having an abortion, maybe even for miscarrying. But I think that, you know, if we're talking like in a Canadian context, we're talking about the conservatives, and the conservatives aren't even anti-abortion. You know, maybe there's some individual conservatives who are anti-abortion, I don't know, but as a party, that's not a party position. And they're not trying to oppress women in any way at all. A woman that I know recently expressed to me that she was worried that if the conservatives won, it would destroy all the national women's organizations. But I just feel like, what national women's organizations? Like, what?
Right.
What are our national women's is there a national women's organization? Because every single one of those organizations that may well have been useful in the 70s and the 80s has been co-opted by trans and therefore aren't working for women anyway. And what are these organizations working for? Like universal daycare? Like, I don't know what they're doing. Like,
right. And I'm at the point in my progression of my thinking that I'm horrified by universal daycare. I don't think that's
I think it's really creepy.
I think children should be at home with their parents, and I don't think that necessarily means their mother, but I think that the warehousing of children and the indoctrination of children by the state is not a pro-woman position or a pro-human position.
Right. And, you know, and there's men in the comments here saying, you know, that David's saying, I'm male, lean right, a decent man, that stands for men and women. I don't like being dismissed because I lean right. And I don't like that either. It makes me really angry because I mean, first of all, it's so dehumanizing. Like, I don't like dismissing anyone because of their politics. You know, if I'm going to dismiss someone, I think it's because of their character. Which might in some ways be expressed through their politics, i.e. if you're like a trans activist and you're trying to destroy women's events and rights and you're fighting for men to be allowed into girls' change rooms, then I might dismiss you as like not a good or intelligent person. But not just like, I really, really don't like this thing where if you're going to vote for, so the BC Conservatives are doing quite well, and I think will probably do quite well in this election, which would be a big deal because BC has been an NDP province for years and years and years and years and years. But people are just getting sick of what they're doing, in large part because of the gender identity stuff, but for all sorts of other reasons. Taxes, it's totally unaffordable to live here. Property taxes are nuts. They don't care about the working people at all. What they did during COVID, people are obviously livid about. And that, of course, extends to federal politics and the Liberals and the NDP across the board because they supported all that stuff too.
Right.
That, you know, this is supposed to be the party of the unions, and all the unions threw their workers and their employees and all of these people under the bus by supporting the vax mandates. And so many people lost their jobs, and tons of people, you know, the nurses, haven't gone back to work as a result.
Right. People have just forgotten all about that. And yeah, and how it particularly hit the nursing profession, which is a female-dominated profession. Like, that was primarily women who lost their jobs over the vax mandates. That's not a pro-woman position. I don't know where this myth that the left is so great for women. I mean, I guess historically I can see where it comes from, but in our current politics, I don't know how they're propping this falsehood up.
No, and I mean, they keep trying to. I've seen, you know, Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party keep trying to, like, they keep posting on X, things like Pierre Poilievre and his conservatives are going to take away, like, the free birth control pill, and they're going to end abortion and all this stuff. And that's not true, first of all. Like, they're not anti reproductive rights, whatever that means to these people, which is not that's not the same thing that I mean.
Right.
But, like, they think that by saying, we're going to give you free birth control pills, that's supposed to be the big sell, and that's supposed to convince Canadians and Canadian women that this is the pro-woman party, when they can't even define what a woman is, and they've thrown all women everywhere under the bus by announcing that trans women are women over and over and over again, and letting men into women's prisons to rape them, and
Right.
so on and so forth.
And
here's your free birth control pill. It's like, oh.
And they're surrogacy, and they're pro porn and prostitution, and I mean, so many other, like, it's just, I don't know how the left is more pro-woman than the right at this point.
They are now. Like, I don't think they are. I don't think that there's, you know, there's no big movement in Canada in any case to oppress women and take away women's rights coming from any party, except for, if you look at it in these terms, which you should, the NDP and the Liberals, who literally did destroy women's sex-based rights by imposing gender identity legislation on us without us having any say.
Well, and what I can see in contemporary politics is it's the left supporting Hamas, which is absolutely not a pro-woman organization, and it's the left celebrating the hijab, and I'm looking at young women being all excited to veil themselves and cover their heads and be pro-Hamas. That is just horrifying, and that's not happening on the right. No, that's a left position, which is so fascinating.
Well, and it's the left that's been, you know, doing all this defund the police thing too, which I've always seen as something that's super dangerous to women. Because absolutely. Who are we supposed to call in situations of domestic abuse?
Social worker.
It's 3 a.m. Hello.
That's what they said here too. You know, the defund the police people said, well, we should send social workers. Domestic violence calls are literally the most dangerous calls that police respond to. That's when police are most likely to get injured and shot and killed, is going into a domestic violence situation, because passions are so high and there are often weapons involved. You can't, like, send a social worker to a DV call. That's crazy.
How ridiculous, as if they would even show up. I mean, they shouldn't show up. You're right. It would be super dangerous. I mean, these are extremely dangerous, violent situations. Often these guys are intoxicated. Often they have guns. Like, this is like, you know, isn't this like the most common way that women are killed? Homicide via their partners, their male partners.
Domestic violence is always in the top 3 causes of death of women of reproductive age. It's just that's how women die in the United States. It's at the hands of their sex partners or ex partners, and sending social workers into that situation is so asinine. Yeah. Anyway, it's not a pro woman position. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to, so these slides, so I think we're going to get quite a big protest on Saturday. Again, it's really strange because Victoria is a much larger, much more politicized, NDP run city with a university full of woke university students and activists over there. When we did the Million March for Kids last September, we were mobbed and the whole thing was shut down, and the police didn't protect us, or they didn't plan to protect us, despite the fact that they knew that the unions were busing in loads of hundreds and hundreds of activists. It's, and then Duncan is just, it's a relatively small town on Vancouver Island, but I think there's going to be a big protest. So if anyone's watching on Vancouver Island, please come and support us. It's accessible to all. We're doing like we're doing $5 minimum or by donation. We basically just need to cover the cost of our venue. If you want to donate more to support us and security and all of that stuff, that's great. But we also want people to come. And we want the community to know about it. So that's, it's a challenge to get the word out in like 4 days. So we're doing our best. So if there's anyone in the area, please come, or, let people know as best you can. I'll post the link in the show notes. I didn't do that yet, and I'll post in the live chat. But yeah, so this Revolve Cowichan immediately shared this post and these slides, which are quite funny. Like, to me, they just seem like they're kind of stuck in like 2017 or something like that. But maybe, like, I don't know, maybe that's because they live on the island or something. No offense to Islanders, I love the island, obviously. Okay, so the first slide says, urgent call. Join us to protest transphobic and homophobic event at Cowichan Community Center, Saturday, June 8th. Meet at the front doors at 4:45 p.m., which is pretty early and organized for the activists. Our event doesn't start until 6:30, so doors are at 6 p.m., so they're planning to gather early. Maybe just, to alert the cops that they're there so the cops can come out. Then it says, what's happening? An event called Pushing Pride, when activism conflicts with women's rights, gay rights, and the safeguarding of kids, is a transphobic event featuring Megan Murphy, a known anti-trans activist. Murphy seeks to delegitimize transgender identity in individuals using violent and harmful language and spreading disinformation online and in person. I find the use of disinformation interesting because they've obviously figured out that that's a good tactic to vilify people and smear them. Because, I think that disinformation thing we got from COVID, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Horse paste.
Yeah, these are crackpots.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
They're crazy and they should be dismissed. They're dangerous because they might disease you. They're trying to sell you ivermectin, which is,
horse paste.
It's horse paste. They'll turn you into a horse.
Right, and tell you to drink bleach, and disinformation is bad. That's what we learned. And you were spewing it? All right.
I'm presuming that the disinformation that they mean is that, like, trans women are men.
Right.
I literally can't even think of anything else that in their minds would qualify as disinformation.
You shouldn't sterilize children.
Disinformation. Puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones will sterilize kids and destroy their bodies for life. Bad for your health. Okay, so then what does it say? So then it says, Megan Murphy has done this before. Murphy has been protested against countless times, including in 2019 when hundreds of people gathered to protest one of her anti-trans events at Toronto Library. I find that sort of interesting because I'm like, do you guys think this works in your favor? I don't know if it does. Maybe it does for some people.
I think they live in such an echo chamber that's one of the reasons they're still living in 2017 is they don't tolerate dissent in their ranks. They don't tolerate dissent in their own heads. We watch that, right? They get very distressed if they start to think wrong thoughts.
Yeah, I guess I mean, because it's not like, I don't feel ashamed of that I've been protested by hundreds or thousands of people around the world. I talk about that all the time, just to sort of show what women are up against when they try to talk about these things, and that it's scary and dangerous, and that these activists are psychotic.
Mm-hmm.
That event that they're talking about was at the Toronto Public Library. The room was sold out. It could only fit 100 people in it. It was never intended to be some massive event. But the women who were putting it on, it was just a group of radical feminists. So, it's not like they had a ton of resources. It was a big fight because there was this big, huge petition signed by thousands of Toronto leftists and members of CanLit. And that was the one where they tried to pressure the VPL to cancel the booking, and Vickery Bowles said no and supported free speech and the library's mandate to support free expression. But yeah, there was like 700 protesters, and the police had to cordon off the whole block to get me in safely, and they were really scared, and they were so awful to the attendees trying to get in, like screaming at them and threatening them and harassing them. Some of the activists barricaded themselves inside the library. I don't think these people do themselves or did themselves any favor in these situations. Like, that's what they don't get. Or I think some of them are starting to get that, that, when they're violent, it's a bad look.
Well, often they show up in their fetish gear as well. That's what I really noticed at the WDI conference. And it's San Francisco, so it's going to be fetish gear central. But the more eyes we can get on how they behave and their whole gestalt, the better for our side, because they're unhinged and crazy and dangerous. When they show up wearing, like their gimp suits and really literally showing up in their fetish gear, it's good for our side.
Yeah, they're really scary looking, they're really creepy looking, and then they behave in really scary, creepy ways. So then they go on to say, Murphy attempted, they're explaining what I try to explain as much as I possibly can. So I don't know, I guess, good. Thanks for spreading the word. Murphy attempted to host an event in Cowichan last year, but the community center canceled after community pressure. So I didn't even read the slide all the way through, but they're admitting that what happened is what I suspected. This is very funny. That what happened was that all these activists got together and harassed and pressured the community center to cancel us. So, okay, thank you for letting us know. At the time, the Cowichan Community Center said the event was likely to violate the BC Human Rights Code and therefore should be canceled. Why is the CCC, this is the Cowichan Community Center, now allowing this event to happen right before the Pride Parade? For excellent reporting on the community response to last year's anti-trans event, see Island Community Center faced backlash for booking controversial issues in the discourse. That was like this hyper bad, embarrassing, biased article in a little tiny newspaper on the island. But either way, I mean, why the CCC is allowing the event to happen right before the Pride Parade? I mean, when else should it happen? Like, we specifically sought out a lesbian, this woman I mentioned before, to speak on our panel because lesbians have been completely pushed out of Pride and bullied,
Right.
and like, it's so, like, no wonder so few lesbians speak out, because it's already like a small community. And I think cancellation is super harsh socially and in terms of like dating prospects. Like, I think it's very scary, but they have been totally, pushed out of this movement, this LGBT now QI plus 2s whatever. Like, it's like, yeah, this conversation should totally be happening around Pride, which is apparently all year round anyway. So
I
like,
know.
what difference does it
Exactly.
make if we do it in June?
Aren't there over 100 trans days that are recognized in the United States officially, like Trans Day of Remembrance, Trans Day of this, Trans Day of that, then the whole month of June. Right. There's always something that how dare you schedule your event around another Trans Remembrance Day? And lesbian now means these straight male autogynephiles. Like, lesbian is Bruce Jenner, or lesbian is Rachel Levine. Right? Those are the lesbians, these straight guys in dresses who get off on thinking about themselves as women.
Yeah, I mean, there's just been endless stories over the past 10 years of lesbians being literally kicked out of the Pride parade.
Right?
Never mind
Right.
off of all these Pride organizing committees and groups. Never mind the fact that they're being told they have to accept men as partners. Like,
Right. And what was the first casualty of this whole movement? It was the Michigan Women's Music Festival. That's their first target, which was essentially a week-long city of lesbians that straight women could come to. It was an amazing phenomenon, just this city of women created by and for lesbians that happened every August in the United States and Michigan. And these men in dresses and their allies started attacking them back in the early 80s, and eventually harassed them so much that it destroyed the festival, destroyed it. So they've been coming after the lesbians for a long time.
yeah, right. Yeah, that's an important point. And I mean, and then of course, so many of the young women who have been casualties of this movement have been these
Right.
young lesbians. I think that it's so rare for young women to call themselves lesbian anymore. I think you're either queer or you become like a trans man. This is why we've been talking about the trans movement as a modern kind of gay conversion therapy.
Oh, absolutely, it is. Absolutely. And especially hitting the lesbians. So
Yeah.
read this slide where they say what
Okay.
to bring.
Oh yeah, sorry. There's a lot of good slides to come. Okay, but there is a slide about freedom of speech. I'm going to read that one
Oh,
first.
that's a good
So
one.
while we support an individual's right to freedom of speech, I hate how people say this. Like, how does anybody with a straight face insist that they support the freedom of speech when in the very next breath they explain that they actually don't support freedom of speech?
Well, not
It's
for
so
you.
weird.
Not for
Right.
you.
Except for Megan Murphy. While we support an individual's right to freedom of speech and the right to have opposing opinions slash beliefs, we cannot support an event that will actively cause harm to transgender and gender non-conforming people. And in brackets, they put a protected class under the Human Rights Code. This is what Bill C-16 did, actually, because I keep trying to explain to people that Bill C-16 didn't actually really legislate anything specific. Like, people are like, is this a self-ID law? And I'm like, no, Bill C-16 did not legislate self-ID or mandate pronouns. But the effect was, by turning, gender identity and gender expression into protected categories under the Human Rights Code and the Criminal Code, it became a foundation for all these kinds of arguments. Like, you can't engage in so-called hate speech against people who identify as transgender, and hate speech is qualified as, anything that challenges the validity of transgenderism, the concept of transgenderism, et cetera, et cetera. But it's just It's just so manipulative. Like, it's like, of course we support freedom of speech, but this will actively harm, they can't, they never really explain how it's harmful. I suspect that if they did try to explain, they would say like, you know, I don't even know. I think the actively harm part, I think they qualify with like that it's denying our existence, or it's saying we don't exist, and then they pretend that's some kind of like genocide or something, which has never ever ever been what anyone said. Not that I know anyway. Nobody that I know is suggesting that people who identify as transgender don't exist. Of course they exist. It's just that you're not the opposite sex. Like, that's the whole thing. You
Like,
exist, but you're male. You exist, but you're female. All I'm saying is that, you are not a woman because you're male. You exist. You are whoever you are. You're you, whatever. I'm not inside your head. Like, you're right there, but you're not a woman. You're just not.
mhm.
So I guess
Well,
that's the harm.
yeah, that hurts their feelings. Their feelings are harmed. It causes cognitive dissonance, which is, actual violence.
Okay, so let's get to the best part of the slideshow is the notes on protest safety. Okay, I just want to mention one more slide before that, which is that they mentioned that the event is set to take place in the community center, a space that is supposed to be safe and inclusive for all people. This is completely unacceptable. That's sort of my favorite part, I think, actually.
That is really good. She must be excluded from the inclusive space.
It's supposed to be safe and inclusive for all people, except for all of these people who live in Cowichan and want to come to the community center to talk about these issues, except for me, except for my co-panelists, all people, but actually just only people who agree with every single thing that we say. So yeah, I think I mean their lack of a bit they're they seem to have no ability to self-reflect or to see themselves clearly, or even to see the words that they're typing onto the page in front of them. So then what follows are the notes on protest safety, as if they're the ones in danger. Like, we're the ones in danger. I'm laughing, but it's very scary and stressful, and it's like always very dangerous to do these things. It's scary for attendees. It's scary for everybody. Because these people are unhinged and dangerous and often advocate violence openly. And I've seen people in various groups advocating violence against me openly. So the notes on protest safety say, wear a mask, bring a water bottle and snacks for yourself and a friend. I feel like they're talking to like kindergarteners. Like, don't forget to bring a snack.
It's not safe if you don't bring a snack. This is for your safety.
Pack a granola bar in case you get low blood sugar. Keep your energy up. Come with a buddy or find one at the protest. We recommend not engaging with event attendees or police officers. I appreciate that. I hope that they stick to that one. I hope that they don't engage with any of the attendees and leave them alone. And then it says, be kind to one another.
But not the TERFs. Don't be kind to them.
What do you think this wear a mask thing is about? Do you think that it's about like protecting them from accountability, or is it like because their faces are ugly, or what do you think?
I don't know. I think some of them are still caught up in the COVID rhetoric. It's been really fascinating to me watching the Fauci trials in the US Congress, and how people are living in totally different realities. And even in RadFem spaces online, I'm seeing people still caught up in the narrative who still believe it was a great idea to make everyone wear cloth masks, and they wish we still had mandatory masking because they'll, they're immunocompromised and might get a cold. It's not just for COVID. You don't want to give anyone a cold. So I think that probably part of it is they still believe that narrative. And then I think they want the anonymity. It's like the old balaclava or the ski mask of activists. They don't want to be identified.
Yeah. I think that it's like such a great excuse that's been given to these people to protect themselves from accountability so they can be even scarier. And then this whole virtue signal where they are presenting themselves always as the ones concerned with safety and being nice and thinking about others, when their entire MO in this context is to come and intimidate and harass and bully. I feel like every time I think that I'm not angry about this stuff anymore because it's been going so long that it just seems so silly and such a, like it's so predictable. It's such a joke. But then it's like, how do you with a straight face accuse us of bullying?
I know.
When you're literally bullying. You bullied the community center into canceled us, and now you're making plans to come out and bully and scare people. That's what you're doing. That you're coming out to bully and scare people. If you weren't coming out to bully and scare people, then you would stand on the other side of the road and you wouldn't scream at people and yell at people and try to stop people from entering and throw things at people and chase people. Like, you wouldn't make it so that we had to have I don't want to have why should I have to have security? Why should we have to have the police come? Like, why can't we just have an event like normal people? Who else does this happen to? Like,
Right.
Who's trying to hold events? I don't see this really happening to other groups.
I think it happens
it's so specific to this event. This issue.
I think all over, definitely the UK. I think all over Europe, it happens to ex-Muslim women or women who speak out against Islam. That's a place.
Oh yeah, okay, that's a really good point. That's incredibly scary. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right, and those guys will kill you. I mean, look what they did to Salman Rushdie last year. Yeah, and that those women have to travel with bodyguards, and they lose their venues because people are terrified of radical Islamists who they'll blow shit up. They'll kill people.
Martyrdom, right?
Yeah, they're into it. So those are the two movements that I see actively using these bullying and terror tactics to keep women from organizing and speaking. And it's interesting that now they've joined together in this, Queers for Hamas movement that we're seeing.
Did you see that video of the Free Palestine activists interfering with the Pride Parade?
I did, and I didn't quite get it.
It was hard to tell who was who, even, right?
I know, that's how I felt, right? Like, okay, the people with the keffiyehs are the Hamas people. Do they even disagree with each other?
I mean, I doubt it.
So I was looking at the San Francisco Pride Parade posted that there will not be any Israeli float. They are not allowing any pro-Israel presence at the Pride Parade in San Francisco, but they will allow as many pro-Palestinian floats as apply to be in the parade. And the pro-Palestinian floats can have their fees waived, so they don't have to pay a fee to be in the parade. And that, again, it's so ironic because Israel is literally the only country in the Middle East where anybody under the LGBT umbrella has any rights at all. It's the only country where gay people have civil rights.
Well, I think, and I think that what would happen if the Free Palestine people got their way, which I think their way is that Israel voluntarily loses a war started against them.
Mm-hmm.
So they just lay down and literally die, because I think that's what would happen if they decided to lose the war, is that then Hamas would live the war and then get rid of Israel and murder a bunch of people. I think that then there wouldn't be any gay rights in that area at all.
So there'd be none.
Like, where would all the queers for Palestine go? I mean, not Palestine.
I think people really need to get familiar with the history of the Iranian Revolution and how the leftists aligned with the radical Islamists and what happened, and the mass executions that happened after the revolution, and the mass hangings of women who refused to adopt the hijab. And this, we're watching history repeat itself. And I'm not going to say I think that the government of Israel is the most righteous force on the planet, but
No.
I'm reminded of what happened to women and children in Germany at the end of World War II, where all the women headed you headed east because you wanted to be captured by the Americans instead of the Russians, because you would be raped and abused less by them, right? That was what was going to happen. It's going to be awful, but it's going to be less awful under this side. And that's how I kind of view that conflict of absolutely don't want to see radical Islam spreading any further than it already has. And it's terrifying to me to watch what should be a movement for the liberation of the people of Palestine from both Hamas and what they're living under with Israel has become a pro-Hamas movement. And it's just horrifying.
Yeah. I mean, this thing where these young women who are very lucky to be living in the Western world, like very lucky to be living in the Western world, to have all these rights and literal freedom, who are now fighting for frickin' Hamas. Like, what do you... I cannot believe the ignorance and the stupidity.
Exactly.
Like, what are you fighting for? Do you have any idea how women live in those parts of the world?
I think, I don't know, the brainwashing is so deep. I hear people defending, like they hate every religion except Islam.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And they don't listen to women like Ayaan Hirsi Ali or Alika Laban or was it Masih Ahmadinejad, who is in exile in the U.S. for fighting the hijab in Iran, and they've killed her family members. She's suffered so much for her fight for women's rights. They're certainly not out in the streets protesting what's happening right now to the women of Afghanistan, which is every bit as terrible as what's happening in Palestine. It's a manufactured outrage, and it's just more like receiving and regurgitating a propaganda without thinking it through.
Well, and coming back to, the left not really being on the side of women or of workers. I mean, the left are the ones who are responsible for mass immigration, which has been really dangerous for women and really bad for workers.
Right.
Even in Canada, it's like Canada is encouraging all this immigration. Immigration's gone crazy in Canada. We have so many more immigrants in the past couple of years than ever before. And so they're giving away working class Canadians jobs to immigrants for very obvious reasons, which is that they can pay them less. And these are people probably who aren't going to be super supportive of unions or, advocate for unions or for labor rights or whatever, because I think they come here and they want jobs. Like, it's really screwing over the people who the left claim to support. It's not like, I think it's mostly youngish men who are coming over under these immigration policies, right?
Military men are the vast majority of who's streaming over our border. And we know, we've watched the propaganda aimed at the youth of no borders are violence. We know the globalists want to get rid of nation states and just have, global corporate rule. We've known that since the Clinton era with the World Economic Forum, with the WTO, with NAFTA, with GATT, getting rid of any kind of national sovereignty and just having global corporate rule. This has been going on for a while. And people are afraid to criticize or even be open about their dislike of the immigration crisis because they're afraid of being called racist.
Well, and they are called racist. If anyone is critical of immigration or Islam.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. But interestingly, what's happening to the Uyghurs in China, they're not out, out protesting that. Again, it's a manufactured outrage that is driving these protests. It's not. It's not about, oh, this is the biggest injustice in the world. It's wanting to join a mob. It's wanting to be part of a movement. It's just a really loud gunshot outside my.
What?
In Albuquerque, yeah, there was
an actual gunshot.
An actual gunshot.
Jesus.
I know. I think I'm all right. You never know how far away it is. Gunshots travel pretty far.
They're really loud. That would still be pretty shocking to me, I think, if I heard a gunshot.
Well, come to Albuquerque for a few weeks. Well, get used to it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, all these movements are completely confused, and all of these people have like no knowledge of history at all. It seems like this was sort of always what I was saying, and this is applicable in so many other areas, but where I first started to notice it was in terms of third wave feminists. So these young feminists who were basically advocating against their foremothers, and like shitting all over everything that these women did for them for generations, because they really didn't have any understanding of that fight. They didn't have any understanding of how hard the fight just for the vote was. That took something like, I don't know, it took decades. Like I think it took almost 100 years or something.
100 years. It took over 100 years for women to get the. Abigail Adams was arguing for women's suffrage before the Declaration of Independence, before the country even existed. The wife of John Adams, one of our first presidents. And women had to fight for over 100 years for the vote, and they went to jail. They were beaten. I'm sure some of them were raped over it. It just was a really awful fight. Yeah.
It was. They act like it was easy, like, oh, the vote, like they think it took like a month or something like that, and they seem to think it's not a big deal, and it's a huge deal, and it was a really, really, really difficult. Those women were a joke. They were treated like a joke, like, ha ha ha, the vote, don't be silly. That was how they were perceived. They weren't supported by the abolitionists, despite the fact that they were abolitionists. So these were women who were fighting to end slavery. And then when it came to their vote, the women's vote, the abolitionists refused to support them. And they were all portrayed, the suffragists, whatever you want to call them. Some people get mad when I say suffragettes, but I think it's nice. I think it's cute, but I guess they're not cute. But they've been recast as racists in modern times. They were said to not have supported the abolitionists because they wanted to fight for the vote for white women, but that's not how it went down. It went down the other way. And so they were like, fine, screw you. We're going out on our own. We're going to fight for the vote. You won't support us. We supported you. Like,
right. Yeah, it took a long time. And it wasn't just getting the vote. I mean, the right to an education, the right to own your own property, the right to have your own bank account. Those were all second wave victories, not first wave. Marital rape was legal in the United States until the late 80s. That's not very long ago. Right? And still, they hate their foremothers so much, and call them all racist. And I can see that, the illogic that's going to happen of, under radical Islam, women won't have the vote, and the suffragettes were racist, and anyone who criticizes Islam is racist. So women's suffrage should be taken away for leftism. I can see. I mean, what is happening in the progression of horrible alliances? It should be terrifying to anybody who's watching. And it will be women who suffer most, but men in the Western world are not going to enjoy living under radical Islam either.
I know, I mean, I've sort of always wondering if these guys these like sort of nouveau traditionalists or whatever, like, I don't know, as a man, is that what you really want? Like, do you really want your wife at home with the kids and submissive and not contributing financially to the household, not working, and like you are the sole breadwinner? And I mean, I don't know that that's like a super masculine sort of pastime either. I saw this funny thing on Lauren Southern's Twitter account, who I've been very much enjoying lately. Lauren Southern has become quite compelling to me.
She had a big awakening, didn't she?
Oh yeah, yeah. So she's got some great tweets. I tried to get an interview with her, but I wasn't able to. But I would love to do that. But she posted this video that was sort of supposed to be a joke, I guess, on the parts of conservatives, of this woman saying, the woman was joking, you know, like, I just want a man who's gonna like stay home and hunt and, you know, take care of the livestock and provide food. And I just want him to stay. I don't want him, I'm gonna go out to work and I'm gonna work and I'm gonna make all the money, because, you know, a man should be like hunting and, yeah, taking care of the farm and the land and all this stuff like a real man would. And it was supposed to be funny, but I was like, no, that's a really good idea, actually. And I feel like a lot of men would like that. Like, being a man is not just about making money. Like, providing for your family isn't just about making money. I mean, that's sort of like a relatively new thing, right? It used to be about hunting and like feeding your family and protecting your family and taking care of the land for your family.
Right.
How would they have time to go out to work at a normal job if they were busy tending to the land and the farm, or hunting or whatever? I don't think they would. We would have to be the ones to get a job and go out to work. Although I guess, what would we do with the babies? I'm as a babyless person, I'm like, great. You go hunt the caribou. I'm gonna work.
I just have this very idealistic continued belief, despite what I see in humanity, that men and women can work together and there can be a nice division of labor that doesn't have to be about anyone being better than anyone else. But I also really do believe that a healthy society centers mothers and children, because that is the foundational unit. I think that healthy men understand, like, you protect women and children, and that, you know, there can be love and respect and you know, equitable division of labor where no one's elevated over anyone else. But a lot of people don't seem to think that's true. They want someone to be dominant and someone to be submissive.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see this idea that was supposed to be a joke, but that I thought was sort of a good idea, is about dominance and submissiveness. I don't think, because I don't think that's emasculating at all. You know,
No,
like,
no,
I
it's
can't
not.
hunt. I'm not gonna hunt. Like,
I don't
don't do physical labor. Like,
and I know plenty of families that would be described as right wing who have what seem like very loving heterosexual marriages, where the women's contribution is absolutely revered and honored as much as the man's. And I don't understand why there has to be this continual war between the sexes. But again, call me idealistic. I think it's possible. And there is a division of labor. Like, we have this running, I guess it's a joke in our house, but it's more of just this commentary of when something like really heavy and big and physical needs to be done. You know, we expect the males to do it, and we say, thank God for men. You know, because I'm not good at lifting heavy shit. I'm not good at you know, opening. You know, I don't have as strong of hands as the men around me. There's you know, thank God for men and thank God for women. I mean, it's like a division of labor. So it's so sad.
well, exactly. Like, I know, I don't understand, you know, like, who's gonna build the houses?
Yeah.
Who's gonna cut the trees down and chop the wood? And again, who's gonna do the hunting and all the like hunting is not just like learning how to shoot an animal. You have to do all the other stuff that I
Yeah.
have no idea how to do and don't have any particular interest in learning how to do. I mean, I think that it would be very practical, but that's not gonna be my thing.
Well,
I need a
it's
man to do
not.
that.
One thing that I learned just growing up in hunting country and being a pretty good shot and growing up in, this dying steel town where people were literally hunting for food was it's not just shooting the animal and gutting and dressing the animal, it's getting the animal out of the woods. And before the invention of deer carts, like I can't haul a deer out of the woods by myself. No way. Like it's 150-pound
No.
animal. That's not going to work for me without some kind of industrial tool like a deer cart.
Yeah. I know, that never even occurred to me. I like to watch the show called Alone, where people are abandoned in the wilderness in BC. Actually, a lot of the shows are set on Vancouver Island, and they're dropped off, um, and, sort of in the late fall and have to, like, try to survive on their own, in, like, literally the middle of nowhere in the mountains on Vancouver Island. But yeah,
Wow.
it's a really good show. It's really interesting because they all, like they build their shelters and some of them are really cool and they figure out how to cook and, I think a lot of people check out early on, and I think the people who last the longest usually make it around 2 months or so, and that's, like, extremely difficult because the primary issue usually is either the mental difficulty of, like, being isolated for that long and being away from your family, etcetera, and then the other issue is always getting enough protein, like, because people can manage to forage and forage and forage, but it's very hard for people to hunt and fish in those kinds of circumstances, and even when you do manage to get something, it doesn't last you through the winter, and you just can't like, they just lose so much weight.
Right.
But, which is that's interesting if you think about it from, like, a vegan perspective.
It's a really big
Sorry.
argument against veganism.
No,
Totally.
yeah, none of them can, like, there and some of them were very, very, very good at foraging, and even then, they just couldn't survive. They just became so sick and thin and weak, and, you can't think straight, right? And it's really dangerous, like, you'll die, your organs will shut down. But it was all meat protein, like, nobody could get enough meat protein to really last longer than 2 or maybe 3 months tops. But anyway, one of these guys managed to shoot, like, a deer or an elk or something awesome, which was huge, but it was stressful just getting the animal out of the
Right.
forest back to his shelter because you can't carry it all, so you have to kind of, like you have to do all of your stuff in the area, don't ask me what it's called, and then carry it back in pieces and go back and forth, and there's all these wild animals, so then you're worried about the wild animals getting it, and it was very complicated. I was like, because you're just like, yeah, he got one, and then it's like, 8 more hours of stressful work.
Right. And all the meat's going to rot.
Yeah,
You've got a few days of eating, but how are you going to cure it? How are you going to,
yeah,
that takes a little, that phrase that's so cliche and overused, but is true. That takes a village to preserve a buffalo or an elk. Like that's a lot of people working all day long for a few days to cut that into strips and hang it and dry it and salt it. And otherwise it's all going to go bad. I'm just kind of surprised they can't catch a fish or two every day.
it's a lot harder than you'd think, and part of it is just, I mean, a lot of them do catch fish, but they can't catch enough fish to survive. Because you're limited in terms of what you're allowed to bring with
Mm.
you. You only get kind of like a few items, and so, if you don't bring a net, then you have to kind of make a net, and then you have to, like, find materials for the net on the beach somehow, which is hard. Some of them do bring nets, but if you're not in a good area for fish travel,
Right.
then you're not gonna get any fish, and actually, like, they don't have a boat, right? So it's not like, I mean, some of them actually do, they attempt to build kind of little canoe things. Most of them are failures, but there was one guy who sort of managed to build a canoe out of, I think he found I think he used like wood and tarps or something like that. So he was actually able to go out in the ocean. So he actually was quite successful at fishing. But otherwise, you're just off the beach or off a rock, or you're trying to use the net and just hope for the best. And that's just, it's unsuccessful if you're not in a good fish area. So I think that's part of the challenge.
Ooh, wow.
It's a good show. Anyway.
It'd be so crazy if they, could raid each other and cannibalize each other.
Well, they're too far away. Like there's nowhere, they're not even close enough. Like they're literally complete. Like this is how big Vancouver Island is. Like I'm not just talking about BC. This is just on Vancouver Island. Like Vancouver Island is massive. There's so much uninhabited space. So there was no, like these people couldn't have, if they wanted to, walk anywhere near any other person or civilization. It's not even possible. Crazy, right?
Yeah, totally.
Really beautiful though. I'm always, when they get there, I'm like, oh, this is nice. Like it's in the forest. It's kind of rainy.
Right.
I wouldn't want to live there though.
Strips them of the need to have their gender identity validated too.
Huh?
It probably strips them of their need to have their gender identity validated.
Who would validate them? Like, if you're all alone.
Right. Who would? That's why the show is transphobic.
They should do a queer season. I think that's what they should do. I would love to watch a queer season of They would have to give up all of their hormones and outfits and makeup and wigs, and then they would have nobody to pay attention to them and all their pharmaceuticals in general, right?
Totally. Yeah, that would be pretty good to see how quickly that no longer becomes their the central focus of their lives. They switch toward trying to find protein.
So I think I'm wondering if there's any more of these slides that I need to read from Revolve Cowichan. They're basically, they're saying, bring your speakers, microphones, your pride flags, your voice, and your friends. We need everyone to share this online and to everyone you can. So thank you so much for sharing, Revolve Cowichan. I'm so glad that they're getting the word out about our event, which is happening at the Cowichan Community Center on June 8th. Doors at 6 o'clock and start time at 6:30 p.m. The good thing about these people is that they do help advertise.
Mm-hmm. So what will the acoustics be like? Will they have you drowned out the way they so often do?
I hope not. I don't know. I mean, the community center is pretty big. It's not like just a little, like we did an event at a like little seniors hall in Nanaimo last year, and it actually it went really well. And the protesters who came, there weren't very many of them. It's sort of out of the way. It's not somewhere that you could like take a bus to or anything like that, or really walk to. You'd have to drive. And I don't know. I think maybe we got like 15, maybe 20 protesters, and they were actually quite respectful. The cops did show up also, so that probably helped, and they stayed away from the building. But if there had been, they did vandalize that senior run community center the night before, so that wasn't very nice. But
this vandalizing the senior center,
I mean, it's run by seniors. It's like volunteer run by seniors. It's just a little community hall so that seniors can, like have their dance classes or whatever, right? Like, so they vandalized it. But they did, like that, if they had been really loud, that probably would have drowned us out. But this is like a pretty big community center. So I suspect, I don't know. I've not been there. So I suspect our security team is sort of on top of that. But I guess I'm hoping that they won't be allowed close enough to the building. I mean, it's in those kinds of situations, I feel like if they do try to get too close to the building and interfere to that extent, then the cops are engaged.
I just remember in Austin when they were banging on the windows of the library.
Yeah, that was horrible.
I know, and the cops never showed up to stop them, even though they were at risk of breaking those windows. They were really banging on windows.
Well, I think they showed up and then they stood across the street. It doesn't
The
make any
cops.
sense.
Oh,
Remember the
right,
cops?
right.
Like a few of them came and then they stayed across the street from us and from the protesters.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was interesting.
Well, I hope the
Um,
event is great. Yeah, I hope that it's well attended. Are you live streaming or recording?
we're not gonna film, I don't think, just because we don't have the resources to
Mhm.
pay someone to film. We don't have any money or budget at all for this event. For the Victoria event, we were planning for a couple months, so we were able to fundraise and we had some donors and we charged a lot for
Mhm.
tickets. Our venue is obviously more expensive. Um, so we had enough of a budget to compensate someone to film. But my friend of Vancouver Island Speaks, Brian Edgar, is going to live stream. He comes and live streams all of our island events, and he live streams all sorts of like freedom events and that kind of stuff. So he's great, and his page is called Storm Rider News. You probably won't be able to find it on Facebook because he, like me, has been shadow banned into all of into the ether. But he does have a channel on Rumble. So let me see if I can find Brian's channel and I can at least stick it in the live chat. Oh yeah, he sent me an interview that he did with me in Victoria. So I'll post that and then you guys will have his channel. But I am, yeah, so he'll be live streaming. So you'll be able to see that on Facebook via his page, and then I'm hoping that he and hopefully some others will come to film the protesters. I would like to get some footage of what these guys are doing because I'm never able to see it or pay attention to it, and that's always interesting to observe.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, people want to get tickets ahead of time. We really appreciate that, and you can get tickets at Ticket Tailor. And I'll post that link in the show notes on YouTube, as well as the link to donate if you can't come but you want to support us and offset our costs. And yeah, I think it'll be a great event. It's always stressful dealing with protesters, but the events themselves are always great. And I really enjoyed doing kind of like more community events. A lot of people know each other, or they meet each other, or they find that they have neighbors there that, like, oh, now I have somebody I can talk to about this. Like, we can be open with each other. And people are always very warm and supportive despite political differences. Gas. Like, it's not like everybody who comes is on the same page. Like, we have radical feminists and we have TERFs and we have like regular working class families and we have freedom people and just interested community members and teachers, and we have all sorts of cool people who show up to these things nowadays, from the island. I noticed somebody in the live chat before said, Mary Lou, that if you had an event in Albuquerque, they would come.
Oh, should we do it?
Yes? You think? Yeah, I feel like we've been talking about that for a while. You've been wanting to do something in Albuquerque, right?
Yeah, and then I get scared, and then I want to, and then I get scared. It's always
Yeah.
to me, it's most frightening on my own turf.
Mhm. Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, for sure, because it puts you in so much danger and, like, it sort of, yeah, makes you a target, right?
Right, right. Jen Specht is doing a detransitioner event here on the 18th in Santa Fe. And the Wolf Conference was here in Santa Fe, and that was great, meeting so many New Mexico turfs that I'd never met before. So a lot is happening here. I think that people are peaking all over the place. I think that like we said earlier, it's a lot easier to discuss this issue than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, it is, and that's really nice. I
Right?
feel like we don't have to walk on eggshells at all. I mean, I'm not walking on any eggshells at all anymore in any case. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And then, when I think of doing an event, there's a part of me that is, I'm just so tired of this stupid topic too. Like, it's just,
I know.
we've been saying the same things about it, which remain true. And I I just am really tired of how crazy this topic is and how stupid the world is that this is still happening.
I know it's not, it's not the thing that you want to talk about all the time. And it's frustrating that you even have to talk about it. But it does help support other people to talk about it. And it's always very galvanizing. And I think, yeah, I mean, I've said this over and over and over again, but the in-person events, I kind of think the in-person events are like the most important thing. I mean, I think there's also, lots of important work that can be done in a legal sense, like, suing these doctors who are transing kids,
Right.
Obviously fighting legislation and trying to change this legislation is incredibly important. Fighting things like SOGI and like teaching this stuff in schools, trying to get the media to report accurately, et cetera, et cetera. But I think like the in-person events are the things that really make people feel brave enough to speak about it, because they recognize they're not alone, because they do speak about it. And I think just practicing speaking about it makes you feel more confident in doing so. Coming out in public and not, hiding behind a screen, I think is empowering. And yeah, meeting people so that you can sort of start organizing in your community maybe, and you don't feel like you're, again, totally isolated where you are and like helpless.
Right. And trips are fun. It's always fun to get together.
Totally. Yeah, it's so fun to see people in person. It's awesome.
Right. Well, maybe someday we can do a group here. Madonna's Ponytail says she would join an herbalist turf class. So you can go to my website, enchantedfamilymedicine.com, and I have an upcoming turfy herb class on menopause. I'd love it if people would join that.
That's like Mary Lou's thing.
It's my thing.
Turfy herbalism.
Right.
Best.
All right.
Do we have anything else we want to say? Okay, when is this course, Mary Lou?
It is July 6th. It's an online course. You don't have to attend in person. It'll be from 9 to noon in person, like live, on Saturday, July 6th, and then it'll be recorded. You can access it afterwards. And you can go to my website, enchantedfamilymedicine.com, to sign up for my menopause class, which is called Crossing the River of Blood and Fire.
Okay, I think I did put that link in the show notes, but let me just double check. I did. It's in the show notes down below if you're watching on YouTube. Register for Mary Lou's upcoming herbalism workshop for menopausal women. And I have updated the ticket tailor link so that you can get tickets and find more information about our event on June 8th in Cowichan at the Cowichan Community Center that we're really excited that we're finally being allowed to do. So I hope to see some of you there. And if you want more info, you can email Vancouver Island Speaks at proton.me. And I believe we'll be back next Wednesday evening.
See you then.
Okay, we'll see you guys all next week. Thank you so much for joining. Good night.
All right, have a great event.